Hello and welcome to Cricket News Down Under, cricketnews.com's coverage of India's tour of Australia. Look, the tour to Australia has begun on a slightly somber note, like we said previously as well, and now India have lost the ODI series, but there's still a whole lot of cricket to play in this tour to Down Under, and it'll be interesting to see how India shape up after an initial blow to their tour to Australia. Joining me at this hour is CricketNews.com's principal correspondent Sandipan Banerjee. Sandipan, I saw a tweet of yours during the game, almost towards the end, that this is really painful to watch. I felt the pain that you were going through then, Sandipan. Is something that you want to touch upon before we get into the wider scheme of things? Was indeed a slightly disappointing result.
Yes, and especially against Australia. Any defeat against Australia is very hard to take. So basically, after watching these first two matches, I think some fan have already started to get a deja vu of that 1998-99 tour. That disastrous tour India had to Australia. So and the way in both the games Australia dominated proceedings, I think it's not a good sign, because I think ODIs and the T20s, India had the best chance of beating Australia in Australia, because test matches it will be tough. We all know that. But at least we believe that in ODIs, since India obviously Rohit is not there, but still we can say the full strength of the Indian team.
Yeah.
So I think if India in white ball cricket, which is India's strength at this moment, if they are not doing well over there on those kind of pitches, like those pitches are like batting paradise. So it will be much tougher job for the test matches.
Yeah, it seems like
I'm not having a good feeling about this tour.
Okay, putting it out there straight away, but let's take it step by step. I think the comprehensiveness of Australia's wins in the first two games has been the highlight, right? They've gone on, they've obviously won the toss, which has helped their case, but after that they've batted stupendously well, especially in the power play. They've taken advantage of India's slump in the power play. India have not been able to pick wickets in the power play. Warner and Finch at the top, extremely wonderful. And then, of course, the magician Steve Smith, Manus Labuschagne coming to the party, Glenn Maxwell coming to the party. So it seems like everything's going very well for Australia at the moment.
Absolutely. And, we can criticize the Indian bowling because they haven't picked up wickets in the power play. But if you see, because all these are dropping pitches, and even the Australian bowlers haven't done much, any well in the power play. I know that they have picked up wickets, but if you see the performance of Stark or even Cummins in the first games or in the first half of this second ODI, I think only Hazelwood with his hit the deck type of kind of bowling, and he got some wickets. So basically what happened is not that Indians were in both the games, Indians were chasing a big total, so the openers were going after the bowling, and on that process they lost their wicket to Hazelwood. But probably if Indians were batting in the first innings, I think they would have scored around 350 or. But the question is whether the Indian bowling at this, which is looking at a dismal
suspect,
position at this point. Right, so whether it would have defended 350 or not, that's a bigger question, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think the toss is a 50-50 matter. It could go either way. We could see how India could fare in the third ODI. But just sticking to the Indian bowling that you touched upon briefly, it seems like, the folks that we're playing, of course, the Bumrahs, the Shamis of the world are obviously world-class operators. They've proven it all across formats. But in the ODI space, especially lately, Bumrah has struggled. And when we've seen that when Bumrah has struggled, Team India has struggled. And then to add to that, Navdeep Saini went for a lot of runs. Yuzvendra Chahal not picking up a lot of wickets. Jadeja as well, has looked good in bits and pieces. That word is used a whole lot to describe him, but I'm going to stay clear of it. But it has looked like the wicket-taking ability of the Indian bowlers has been almost absent, which has in fact been, the differentiator in the two games.
Yeah, but at at one hand you are saying this is the best, probably the best Indian bowling attack ever. I mean, which I also tend to agree. But then if you depend on only one player, Bumrah can have off days. He can have poor form. He can have a rough patch as well. So if you are depending on only Bumrah to take wickets in the power play, then I guess I doubt the strength. Also, going into the series, we all knew that Saini had some sort of issues. So I don't know, especially after the first game, why he still played in the second ODI. They had Natarajan in the backup. They have Shardul Thakur in the backup. I think they should have definitely picked it. But I don't know. Virat Kohli, I have seen this tendency of his players who he tends to like. He generally, continues with him. Whereas maybe someone like Natarajan or Shardul would have done a much better job than Saini. Especially the way Natarajan, I know that T20, there is a difference between a T20 format and a 50-over format, and it's not very tough. It's not very easy to bowl, all those Yorkers continuously in 50-over cricket. But I think still these are all these bilateral series. If you don't try your players on these bilateral series, then where will they play? I mean, that's the question. So I think there's probably a selection error. I think Saini shouldn't have played the second ODI.
Well, you also like to think that you need to have a bit of variety in your bowling. And when you look at Australia, you see Josh Hazlewood is a completely different bowler. Stark is a different variety of a bowler. Cummins is a different bowler. So they've got that variety to sort of rely upon. Whereas India, they've got this short skiddy nature type of a bowler in two bowlers. And Saini is a slightly taller guy, but he still doesn't hit the deck as hard as other bowlers do with his height. And his physical prowess. So is there a case of maybe a one-dimensionality to India's pace bowling that's hurting India at the moment?
Absolutely. One-dimensional. In this Indian bowling lineup, if Bumrah is not in form, is a one-dimensional bowling attack. Let's not have any fantasy dreams about it. It's a one-dimensional bowling attack. There is no left-arm seamer in this attack. There is there is not like someone who can come in and hit the deck and get some bounce out of these drop-in pitches like Hazlewood has done. So I guess this Indian bowling lineup is a one-dimensional attack. So and now with Bumrah being out of color, it is being exposed. And Sami, I think in patches he has done well, but still he's not looking at his best at this point.
You saw that when Hardik came to bowl, right? You had something different. He was taking the pace of the ball, trying some cutters, and it worked, right? He got Smith as well. So it seems like the sixth bowling option is one area of worry. And how do you sort of try and get a little variety into scheme of things? Will that be one of the points of discussion, with the leadership team heading into the third ODI and also the T20I series?
I think just before the World Cup, India had a set pattern in their bowling lineup. They had these bowlers who can attack the batsman with the new ball. They had the likes of Bumrah and all, who can be great at the death overs. And then in the middle overs, they had Chahal and Kuldeep, the combination. The wrist spin combination. There was a lot of talk about wrist spin, and Virat Kohli, in fact, he said a lot of things that wrist spin is probably India's best, best formula to win matches in any condition and all. But nobody is talking about wrist spin anymore. So what happened to that? If you believe in this formula, just because they had a couple of poor game matches in the World Cup, you have just discarded the entire idea. They discarded the entire work of like 2-3 years, and now again they are back to those finger spinners. And though I think Jadeja has done well, but still I think against a team like Australia and on those pitches, even I can remember Ravi Shastri saying in the last tour when India toured there, Ravi Shastri said Kuldeep Yadav is our best spinner when India is playing abroad. But that same Kuldeep Yadav is not playing any format at this point. I know he has struggled in the IPL, but still you can try him in the 50-over. There's no harm trying him. If you don't try your players when at a crunch moment, then I think how will you develop a player? How will you give confidence to a player? So I guess I tend to disagree a lot about the thought process of this Indian team match.
Yeah, I mean, when Virat came at the toss and he said no changes to the team, there were a bunch of surprises there. You all thought that a whole bunch of experts on social, on broadcast also thought that maybe it was time to give Kuldeep Yadav a go, Shardul Thakur a go, to just ensure that there is a good balance, because Shardul also adds to the batting of the team.
Yep.
So you take Jadeja out, bring Kuldeep Yadav in, and then you play Shardul in place of Saini. And that ensures that there's balance, but also ensures that you get something different to the bowling and also play Kuldeep. So definitely a bunch of surprises there. You reckon now with the third ODI, we could see some changes heading into the T20I series as well. A lot to play for, remember. The series, there's a whole lot of cricket to play. And it's important how India pivot right now, which will sort of set the course for the remainder of the series.
I think they will play. Saini is probably will not play. So probably they can play Shardul in place of him. And Chahal, I think I don't know, after 2 bad games, I hope that he will get a day off and Kuldeep will play, because Chahal is, on those Australian pitches, he has nothing to offer basically. So, and the way Steve Smith and the other Australian middle order batsmen have played him, I think India need to be a bit more proactive now. I mean, they have to try Kuldeep at this point. So I hope that in place of Chahal, they will play Kuldeep. But obviously I won't drop Jadeja, because Jadeja adds a lot of values. It's not just about his bowling. He can come in and score some runs in the death over, towards the end. He saves 20-25 runs in an ODI with his fielding. So yeah, though I think in these 2 games, both teams have fielded horribly, but still, I think hope that now the caravan of the series is moving to Canberra. I hope fortunes will change, at least on the field, for both teams.
Yeah, the caravan of the series moves from Sydney to Canberra, but the Bharat Army's presence will be felt in the capital city as well. As much as they've made their presence feel in Sydney, they've been loud, they've been vocal, and throughout the downs and the ups, they've been cheering Team India throughout this series. CricketNews.com are, of course, proud partners of the Bharat Army, India's #1 supporter group of Team India. And we're bringing you a quick package of what the Bharat Army have been doing in Sydney. Take a look at this, and I'm sure you'll enjoy this a whole lot. Well, the Bharat Army are, of course, loud and proud, as they say in their own very words. They've been there for Team India on every rainy day. They've been there for Team India when the sun has shined, and you'd be sure that they'll be around throughout the series as well. Sandipan, having the crowd back in the stands, having supporters back in the stands, championed by the Bharat Army, of course, will be a big motivation for Team India to bounce back into this series and redeem themselves and change their fortunes going forward.
Absolutely. Crowd is important. When you as a player, if you ask any player, playing in front of an empty stadium and playing in front of a packed stadium, or stadium where there is crowd, because we all know that Cricket Australia has only allowed 50% of the stadiums to be full. So so I'm just saying that having crowd on the field and having that atmosphere, people are cheering your name when you are fielding at the boundary line, people are backing you, people are encouraging you. At times, Australian crowd can be nasty. I'm talking about Australian fans, and that can actually motivate a player. We have seen that in the past. Kevin Peterson.
Yeah.
So just saying, so it can have an effect, a psychological effect on a player. So obviously, having crowd back on the field is a huge aspect for the cricketers, and I hope that soon we'll see full capacity stadium back to their capacity in the future games.
100%, and we'd be sure that this will be a big motivator, like Sandipan said, for India to bounce back. Remember, the players are also playing in front, in the presence of supporters after a long time, and it sure is a differentiator. Everyone who's been at a stadium who's associated with cricket can tell you that the course of the game can change at any point. When you have vociferous strong support, and that's what the Bharat Army do. And we'll be sure that they'll be there in Canberra as well, and we'll bring you some glimpses of that as well. Speaking of Canberra, the third ODI, Sandipan, look, the ODI series is, of course, out of the way for India. They've lost it, but there's obviously a whole lot to play for pride, and also to build momentum heading into the T20I series, because you do not want to be a situation where you've been through a whitewash and then you try to again redeem yourself, in another series. So a very important third ODI, I should say.
Hey, I mean, any game on this tour is not, no game in this tour is irrelevant, because we all know that the most important part of the tour is the Border Gavaskar Trophy, and all these white ball matches, even the practice matches, we're just building up towards that.
That's
so, and like I said in my last video as well, that it is all about creating those psychological pressures on the opponent, creating a momentum for a team, irrespective of the format. Now Australia have the momentum on their side, and Indians are already on the back foot. So now how Indian team will bounce back, whether they can or not, even in the last ODI or in the T20 series. It will have a lot of impact at least in the first test in Adelaide, which will also be a day-night one. So I know that a lot of these white ball players will feature on the test series as well, especially the bowling unit. And the way the Australians have dominated the bowling unit, I think if Indians can't pull it back in time, then it will have a negative impact on the Indian bowlers going into the test series.
Yeah, just to speak about the hosts as well, so that they don't feel left out. Warner and Cummins, of course, have now been. Warner, of course, is injured. He has an issue with his abductor, which is the groin, and he, of course, there'll be a race against time to have him fit for the first test between India and Australia. Cummins, on the other hand, has been rested. Bit of a blow for Australia, but it won't bother them as much.
No, that's fine. They are saving their players for the important part of the tour. And I don't know whether Stark will play also or not. But they have enough backups. They have enough backups. I think Decoy Shorts has been added in the T20 side. He's a wonderful T20 player. We have seen him in the IPL as well. In the BBL, he's a star. So on those kind of pitches, he will be a huge player for the Australian team. So like for like replacement for Australia. I know that Warner, he carries a lot of weight on the field, but still, I think Short is a huge replacement for the Warner. I think like for like replacement for the Warner in the T20I series. But yes, Cummins, I think I fully agree. If India would have won the series, they would have also rested probably Bumrah, at least Bumrah. So I think it was always on the cards. In fact, I won't be surprised if they rest Stark as well.
So, Sandipan, you spoke about Australia being, using some of their resources on the bench to rest their players who will be playing every other format. But do you think India could potentially be doing the same? Because we also have a bunch of players that are playing all three formats, and the workload could prove to be a problem for a bunch of these players, including the likes of Mike Agarwal, some of the bowlers. So do you reckon that could be a change we could see in the ODI and the T20I series?
At least for the third ODI, I don't think India will change their, rest some of their players, because they are not in a position to rest. And going into this, I know talking about this workload management, I don't think it matters a lot for the batsman. But I think for the bowlers, it does. So if probably India would have won that series 2-0 going into Canberra, they would have also rested the likes of Sami and especially Bumrah. But now that since India are in a position of being whitewashed once again, you remember they have already been whitewashed in New Zealand earlier this year. Now they are on the verge of being whitewashed once again in an ODI series. So I guess I don't think the team management will rest some of their key players, at least in the third ODI.
Yeah. 7 straight defeats in international cricket. So that is something that you want to put a stop to. They've been straight 7 defeats, and you don't want to carry that record
Southern Hemisphere.
Sorry,
6 in Southern Hemisphere.
6 in Southern Hemisphere. That's a big number. That's a big number.
I mean, and they lost 3 in New Zealand. Now they have lost 2 here over here. So on the verge of, on the verge of 6.
Yeah, on the verge of 6. But that is a number that Virat Kohli and the team would want to put a stop to. And you'd like to think that this third ODI not only is important for pride, but also important for them to stop this losing momentum, because just like you have winning momentum, there's also momentum of losing games. And to put a stop to that would be very, very important. And that's how the third ODI becomes crucial for Team India's chances. Final thoughts, Sandipan, before we depart on this preview?
Well, India have to pull it back, because they have already seen what can happen. What can happen if the momentum is not with them in New Zealand, because they won the T20I series 5-0, and we all thought that okay, fine, now we are all set, all ready for the Test series. But just before the Test series, we had 1 week, 3 ODIs in 1 week, where New Zealand won all the 3 games, and they picked up momentum. They went into the Test series with the momentum in their hand, they went on to win the Test series 2-0. And they thoroughly, India, even in fact, we have seen on previous tours to England, South Africa, that India at least fought. India at least were in the game, but in New Zealand on both the tests, India were not in the game. So it is all about picking up momentum at the right time. So I think going into the third ODI series, I think India probably have to do some necessary changes in their 11. And they have to pull their, the top players have to put their hands up. There is no point, just playing for pride or anything. I mean, they have a lot of, not only just pride, I think they have a lot at stake at Canberra in the last ODI.
Yeah, the dreaded M word in sport, momentum, is so very important. We tend to look at the stats, the numbers, the figures, but it's important to understand that it's a sport where a whole lot of human emotions are involved, and winning is something that is put on the pedestal, and it's the most important thing in sport. And so
at least thought about your fans.
This thing will be very important. Think about
the groups like Bharat Army. Even on this, in this torrid time, we know what happened in 2020 through this pandemic and all. They are supporting their team. I know a lot of them. They don't even stay in Australia. But now, despite the travel ban, some of them have traveled probably. They have traveled. Some of them have, traveled with a travel authorization from the Australian government just to support the Indian team. And a lot of them, they are not probably as well. They have traveled. Some stay in Melbourne, but all these fans have come together in Sydney, and now they're traveling around with the team. They are not being sponsored, by the way. So they're spending their own money and all just to support the Indian. At least think about these fans. It means a lot.
Sandipan has issued a rallying cry for Team India. Go ahead and put leave it all on the field for Team India, for the fans, and of course for good reason. The Bharat Army and supporters all over the world, of course, of Team India will be keen to see a good result in the third ODI and of course the T20I series. And we, of course, will try to do our best as well at cricketnews.com to bring you the latest from Down Under through this series and a bunch of other video series as well. Thank you so much, Sandipan Banerjee, for joining us. We'll be seeing you soon, very, very shortly.
Thank you so much.